Hey, this is Bo from Open Source Skateboards, and this is a basic instructional video for getting started in DraftSight by creating a skateboard deck profile. DraftSight is a free 2D drafting program, and it's really useful if you want to do any two-dimensional digital fabrication. Alright, so this is DraftSight. We have a workspace, which is this black area right here. We have a command window down at the bottom here. You'll use this to type in commands for creating your features. And along the sides we have various toolbars. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to look at my sketch, and the first thing I'm going to do is make two center lines on my board. One horizontal center line, because the board, most likely, if you're making a board, is probably going to be symmetrical across its length. So we're going to make that line first. So I'm going to go over here and click on this line segment tool. And now you see that my pointer just changed to crosshairs. So I can click anywhere in space. We have this X-Y axis that lets us know where we are. So I'm just going to click anywhere. I got 1 point, and I've just clicked, and you can see as I move my mouse, it's extending and changing my line. Now I want this to be exactly 31.5 inches. So it's really hard to do that just with your mouse. So what I'm going to do is go down to my command window, and I actually don't have to click on it. If I just start typing, it'll start typing there. And I'm going to specify my next point. So we're in an XY coordinate system, and we want a relative coordinate to where we currently are. Since we've placed ourselves randomly in space, we don't know our exact coordinates, so we can't give absolute coordinates. What we can do is give relative coordinates, and basically what that means is let's go this distance in X and this distance in Y from this point. So I'm just going to type in at, which specifies this is a relative coordinate, my X distance, 31.5, comma, my Y distance, which, since this is a horizontal line, 0. And then just hit enter on my keyboard. And now if you look, I have a line that is 31.5 inches long. And to stop making the line and not continue, because you can see that it's still extending off there, I'm just going to hit escape. And now my line is placed. The next step is going to be to make a vertical line that comes and intersects this line that will be at the maximum width of our board. So I'm going to create another line, and I could either click on the line segment tool like I did last time, or just type L and hit enter on my keyboard, and that does the same thing. Now, as I move along this line, you'll see some dashed lines form and some yellow points form. So what those are is those are basically snapping my cursor to points of interest. So that dashed line represents a spot along the plane of the line that I've drawn. And this triangle right here, that represents the midpoint of that line I drew. If I go close to the end, we have a little yellow box, and that represents the endpoint. And if I go straight up from that box, you can see this dashed line, and then it's really hard to see, but there's a little red X where my crosshair is. And that's basically saying I'm going to make that's snapping to that plane from the endpoint. Now I could turn that off using these buttons down at the bottom here. There's a bunch of different ones. The best thing to do is just play around with them to see what they do. Right now I have it set to what I think is most useful for what I'll be doing, but we'll probably change those. We may change those later on. So I'm just going to make this, it could really be from anywhere, but I think for a popsicle deck like I'm making, it'll be good to make it from the midpoint. So I'm going to click at my midpoint, and then I'm going to go half my width up from there, since that's my center line. So that means I'm going to type at, again specifying I'm moving relative to the point I just started at. My x distance, which is 0 because I'm going vertical, comma, my y distance, which is half of my width, so 4, since my width is 8 inches. Just type enter, and now I have a line that goes up, and then I'm just going to repeat that process for a line that goes down. And this time, since I am going down, I actually need to indicate that with a negative number. So just like the coordinates and the arrows tell us right here, to the right is positive in x, and up is positive in y. So if I want to go down or left, I'll need to type in a negative number. Okay, so now we have basically the starting point for a skateboard. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is make my nose and tail lengths, which are the same. They're both 6 and 5/8. So I'm going to start at the end point, each of the end points, and go in. So I'm going to go at negative, since I'm going to the left, 6.625, which is 6 and 5/8, comma 0. I'm going to make this line go up, 0.4. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so I just messed up right there. And that's perfect time to tell you how to undo. So in order to undo, I like to just hit Control Z, and I find that that's the easiest ways. There's a couple different ways. As you can see in your command window, there's also an undo command. So if you just typed U, it would undo that last point as well. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. And then I want to connect these lines because I know I want my board to be straight between the nose and the tail. So I'm just going to use the snaps to basically go right between those. Again, I'm hitting escape to get rid of that line that comes off the end there and not place my next point. Okay, so let's start seeing how this looks. This is kind of what we want to see. So I'm going to now want to make my rounded ends of my board. Okay, and the way we want to do that is on the side here we have a couple different options. We have a circle tool, we have an ellipse tool, we have an ellipse arc, and we have a circular arc up at the top here. So again, that's an arc, circle, ellipse, elliptical arc. Since the distance from here to here is 6.625 and here to here is 4, that means it's not a perfect circle. So if I made a perfect circle, you can see that it's not going to go the full length. If I wanted my nose to be a perfect circle, I could place this and then type M on my keyboard to move the object. Now it's asking me to specify the entities. Just click on it, hit enter, and now it's asking me where I want to move it from and to. So I want to eventually put it at this point, so it's flush with this point, but I need to grab it from here first, because this is the point that I want to start at, and this is the point where I want it to end. So again, I have my snaps on. So I'm going to snap to this one. I clicked, and then I'm going to click to this one and place it there. Now I'm just doing this for an example to quickly show you, but in that case I would need to then extend my line out here, extend this one out here, and then I'm actually going to do an arc over my circle. So I'm going to click on the arc tool. It's saying in the command window to specify my start point. And it's important to know that when you're making an arc, you need to always specify your start point counterclockwise from your end point. Otherwise, because DraftSight goes in a counterclockwise motion. So I want to start here. Since I want to go from here down to here, I need to start at the top here. Specify my through point, so it goes through this point, and then specify my end point here. And now I actually have an arc over top of this circle, so I can delete this circle by I click on it, press delete on my keyboard, and now I have a perfectly round nose. That actually isn't a common shape, but I just wanted to go through that to show you how you can basically modify your curve in case you don't want it to go to your bolt holes. So let's just hit undo a bunch of times to go back to where we were. Okay, so what I want to do is create an elliptical arc. Now it's asking me for an axis start point, or if I don't want to place a start point, you see that it has this, under options it has center with C underlined. If I want to specify the center of my elliptical arc first, I can type in C, hit enter, and then it would ask me to specify a center point. I'm going to specify the axis start point though. So that means that I have to specify basically 2 points that are opposite of each other. So the axis start point, so let's say we're going to make the y-axis of our ellipse. So the start point will be at the top here. The end point for that axis is at the bottom here. So now you can see I have an ellipse that's bound by that axis start and end point. Now it's asking me for the other axis end point. So how far out this needs to come. And I want it to snap to right here. So I'm going to click there. And now it's asking me to specify my start angle. And again, going counterclockwise. So we start at the top and we wrap around to the bottom. So now I'm looking at this shape and I'm not in love with the shape of it. So what I can do is I could play around with these ellipse tools and what are called fillets to basically make something that is closer to the shape I want, because this looks a little too pointed for me. So I'm going to delete this. So I didn't like that last shape. It was a little too stretched out for what I wanted. So I'm going to create a new elliptical arc. Create it the same way I did the first one. Except this time I'm not going to pay attention to how long my board is. I just want to get the shape that I want. And I think this looks pretty good so far. So again, specify my start angle, my end angle. Now move this out. And then extend these lines. So now I want to do the exact same thing on the other side. So what I'll do is copy this shape, because we don't know how far I made this. I just picked what looked good. So I'm just going to click on it, type copy into the command window, hit enter, and now it's asking me to basically do the same thing I did for moving it. And I'll click my start point. I'm going to click my end point at the end of my skateboard. And it'll basically keep copying objects until I hit escape. So I'm going to hit escape. So now I've got this object placed, and I want to rotate it. So I'm going to type in rotate into my command window. It's asking me for the pivot point. My pivot point is this point because that's the point I want to stay the same, right? The pivot point is the point that this is going to rotate around. So this is my pivot point, and my rotation angle is going to be 180 degrees. I can either type that in or do it manually. I'm going to type it in. So I typed in 180, hit enter, and then extend these lines again. And again, instead of making a new line like I did on the other side, I could actually just click on this blue dot and stretch it. Hit escape. Okay, so now I've got the profile of my board. The next step is going to be to place the bolt holes. And this is really helpful if you're going to be laser cutting your veneers beforehand. I only do this for one veneer, and I do it on the bottom veneer. So basically, when I glue up all my boards, you can't align everything perfectly all the time. So since it's difficult to align everything really perfectly, I'll put the holes in the bottom veneer so that when I go to drill my holes, I already have the holes drilled perfectly where they need to be, and I know my alignment's going to be perfect. It's important to drill from the bottom as well, because if you go at an angle at all with your drill and you're drilling from the top, your holes aren't going to be aligned for your trucks. So bolt holes are a specific distance and size. They're spaced at 1.625 across the width, and they are 2 1/8 across the length of the board, and their diameter is 3/16 of an inch. This line marks the center line that goes through the outermost holes of our bolt holes. So in order to place this, I'm actually going to make a box with the corners as my center points. So again, I'm just using the line tool for this, and I click at this intersection, and I want to go half the distance of the width. So I want to go up, and remember the width was 1.625, so I need to go half that distance, which is 13/16. So if I go up, we go at 0, 13/16. Okay, there's my first point. I got to go 2.125 to the right. Then I want to go down 1.625. And I could just snap here, snap back. And then I could place my bolt holes, so I'm going to use the circle tool over here. And I have a couple different options that it gives me, but the default is to specify the center point, and since I drew my corners at the centers of the circles, that is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to click here first. Now it's asking me for a radius, or the option to specify a diameter. Since I know the diameter right off the top of my head already is 3/16. That's what I'm going to type in. So I hit D, type in my diameter, and then I just want to copy that. So click on it, type copy, enter, specify my from point, and then click on all 4 corners. And then hit escape. And now, if I want to check to make sure these are correct, I can go up to the top here of my screen and click on Dimension, Linear, and go from the center points of each of these holes. So as you can see, our dimensions are a little strange right now. It's using a comma to separate these numbers rather than a decimal point. And I actually would prefer that it's in fraction anyways. So let's go to Format, Dimension Style. And if we go down to Linear Dimension, you can see right here we have the format, the precision, and the decimal separator. If I set this to a period instead of a comma, that will then change that dimension. So if I click OK, you can see that that just changed to a decimal point for me. But again, I want this in fraction. So I'm going to go back down to linear dimension, change this to fractional, and change my precision from 1/4 inch to 1/16. That still looks a little strange. So let's go to Format, Dimension Style, Linear Dimension. And let's change this from fractional display from horizontal to diagonal. I think that'll be a little bit easier to read. There we go. Okay, so we have 2 1/8, and which is what we wanted, and the linear dimension from top to bottom or across the width is 1 5/8. Perfect. I'm going to delete those. And then what I can do is just copy this. So in order to copy all these things, I'm going to click off to the left side over here and click and hold so I can drag this box around my objects. And now I selected everything. If I came from the left side, I would have selected everything I intersected with. So I'll just demonstrate that. You can see it's a green box. And now everything is selected that I touched, not everything contained within the box. So again, I'm going to go from the left to the right. Type copy. This is my from point. This is my to point. Hit escape. And then I want to get rid of all these other lines in here that are irrelevant. So I could just delete them one by one, or I can use that left box tool to select whatever I pass through. And let's do one final check of our dimensions just to make sure that the overall length and width are what we want. (31.5). Perfect. And 8. Perfect. And that's basically how you make a profile of your skateboard deck in CAD. And to save this, you just go to File, Save, and you have a bunch of different options for saving. You have DWGs and you have DXFs. I happen to usually like to save in DXF. That format works with the other programs and software that I work with to make my laser cutter files. So I'm going to save this as a DXF file and sample board. Just hit save, and I'm done. So now you have a basic understanding of a 2D CAD program. Keep playing around in it to get better and have fun creating.